Hello. How's it going today? So I have a suggestion today. Been putting my little thinker to work. So I've heard other people suggest being smart enough to vote. So what they said is you got to get an IQ test, so high on an IQ test in order to be able to vote. And I don't think that's fair. But I think that the idea is great. So I think if we took and said, if you want to be able to vote, you got to come into a voter registry exam. And then in the exam, you go into like a movie theater, and everybody's seat has like 4 buttons on the armrest, or 5 or 6, or a keyboard, whatever. I want to keep it somewhat simple though. So I would think 4 buttons, so you could do multiple choice or true and false. Anyhow, you could do it through phones, because everybody's got a phone too, right? Or you could even provide the phone, have it right on the back of have a tablet hooked up to the back of the chair in front of you, so you have a tablet or computer or whatever. Anyhow, and then you'd have say 4 people, two conservatives and 2 Democrats, sitting behind the glass or above in the balcony or whatever, and each of them is given questions, and they keep each other honest on the answers, and they present the questions to the crowd, and if you don't know the answer, you can just shut up and wait for the next question, or you can take a chance and try to answer it. And if you do know the answer, then you'd answer it confidently. So, and then have it so that you got to get whatever. Say you got to answer 2 questions from the Democrat guy and 2 questions from the Republican guy, and get them both right. Or, you know what I mean? Get all 4 right. And you can take all week to do it if you want. I don't care. If you're willing to fucking go there every day and try those tests over and over again and put that kind of dedication into your vote, you deserve to vote anyway. But most people, if they didn't get it right away, they're gonna just give up. The people who we would want to give up. And then the questions could be made simple too, because you don't need to be a fucking genius to be able to vote. But basic things, like you should, a couple politicians' names, some of the things they've done in their careers, some geology things, like, some shit about the world and world politics and things like this, and just have it so, like, whatever, you got to know a few things, right? And that way there, the questions could be broad, right? And the moderators or what have you would have an easy time, and once you just register to your seat, my driver's license, ID, whatever, and then answer your questions, right? And then say, if you're fucking overzealous and you think you know everything and you answer a bunch of questions wrong, at a certain point, they just say, no, you're fucking disqualified. You're too stupid to vote, or too misinformed to vote. You're not allowed. And then if you but if you were to sit there for, like I said, a week and not answer any questions, well, that's a wise decision, right? They say that a fool opens his mouth and casts all doubt on whether he's a fool or not, where a wise man will keep his mouth shut. And it remains a mystery. But so this way here, if you wanted to vote, it would force you to go and work for it. You'd have to take a day and go to one of these registry things and get registered at some time throughout the year or throughout the term or whatever, right? Like, and you'd have to give people a big window. So say a year before the elections, you know, you open up the fucking theaters. Excuse me. And then, yeah, like I said, and if people don't want to vote, you don't vote. If you do want to vote, you go do this. It shows initiative. You don't have somebody coming to your house, knocking on your door, saying, "Oh, let me register you, get you to vote." Blah blah blah. Everybody vote, no matter how brain dead you are. Then we'd have only intelligent people voting, or informed, or passionate people. But you wouldn't have these fucking leftist weirdos. Or if you did have them, at least during that test, they would have to fucking answer the questions truthful, no matter how much it killed them to fucking own up and admit that there's facts in the world and that you fucking can't deny those facts, and there's laws of physics, and there's laws of fucking gravity, and there's laws of the world, just the laws of the society, and all of them matter, and you gotta fucking yield to them. So it would force all those types of people to at least once in their life to fucking knuckle under and admit that, you know, this is the real politics. Or if they answered it wrong and then they were like, rah, 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 CNN told me, then they'd get educated, because they'd have to fucking sit there and see, you know, they'd have to go and find out why their answer was wrong and go talk to somebody, and you could explain it to them, and they'd actually learn something maybe. And then the next election cycle, maybe they'd actually have learned enough that they'll pass the fucking thing and be able to vote, or they'll learn enough to pass the thing to vote badly, right? Like just basically knuckle under and tell the truth for 30 seconds and then go back to their fucking insane false reality. But at least you'd have to knuckle under for that 30 seconds, and you know what I mean? Like, that's going to make a toll on your psyche. But I'm trying to come up with a word for the, you know, for that insanity. Anyway, but yeah, it'll make you have to face it, own up. So I think that'd be a good thing. And like I said, you know, give them a bunch of questions, let them get a few wrong before you disqualify them. But if you get so many wrong and you're just wrong, no, come back next voting cycle. You're out. Because that's one good way to know that the world's going to go forward progressively in a good way, you know. There's other ways of doing similar outcomes, I guess, but we can educate as many people as possible and everything and try to drag them out of that swampiness. But that's a big, long cycle. Whereas if we were to enact this, at least, people would get through. There'd be loop ways of getting through or whatever, sit beside your buddy who knows shit and answer, to get him to answer the questions for you. Or just cheat on people around you, kind of thing. If you know what I mean, if you could. Or I suppose, well, and that's why you'd have to have both Democrats and Republicans represented over the test, watching it over, and watching each other over to make sure that they weren't letting people through, cheating in any way, slanting the questions, slanting the answers, giving out answers, giving out hints, anything like that. You don't. And then if there was a question that, like, the two people at the moderators things got into an argument over, they just wouldn't be allowed to ask that question. It would have to go to a higher source and get sorted out to who was correct about the answer, and then that question could then be programmed in for everybody to ask, because it was something that was obviously a big controversy. So if it's that much controversy in it, then that's a good question to be asked right across the board at all of these things, kind of thing. Though you'd want to keep variety in the questions so that nobody, to slow down on the cheating, you'd want to make sure that it isn't just the same generic questions all the time. You'd ask, what's AOC stand for? How many states are there? Or provinces or whatever, depending on what country you're in. How many countries are in North America? Central America, South America. What are these things? Like, what's the continent? What's the difference between a continent and a country? And just there's just so many simple questions that you could ask that half the country doesn't know the answer to these things. They're oblivious. They shouldn't be allowed to vote. If you don't know that little bit of stuff, like, if you can't answer 4 basic questions correctly without getting 20 wrong,